my favorite online investigative journalism show, so go check that out. You guys probably already know his name and learned about me from him, my being on his show. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about this Jeffrey Epstein case. The reason why I wanted to talk with Ed is a couple recent developments in the case. I'd followed his excellent reporting on Epstein. I believe he had Pierce Redmond on talking about the case, maybe some other guests if we can jog my memory. But really what's come up recently, well, there was a big article in the Miami Herald in November of 2018 that really covered the case in detail. There was a lot of video. It was, I think, a 6-part series. And then most recently, even just this month, during the confirmation of William Barr, our new Attorney General has just been confirmed and I believe signed in yesterday. Ben Sass was one of the talkers, but he informed or asked the DOJ, the Department of Justice, to look again and look at the probe of the 2008 agreement of Jeffrey Epstein. So this is fairly recent, but Ed is really very knowledgeable about this, and I'm glad that he's taking some time out. He just had some surgery, so I really appreciate you being here. Ed, are you there?
William, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Cool, man. So maybe we can just start for people who really don't know the details of the case. Maybe you can just do a 5-minute primer on just who Jeffrey Epstein was, why he's important, and what happened about his case that was such an injustice.
I was sitting in a waiting room one day, and I saw this magazine, and it was something about this curious case of this hedge fund billionaire down in Palm Beach, and how he was had 3 little girls come into his Palm Beach mansion every day, 12, 13, 14-year-old girls, to give him massages, and he would escalate the activity to escalate the statutory rate. He was paying them like $100, and he had like a multi-level marketing deal going on where they would recruit their friends, and get paid. And I says, wow, what a story, man. I had never heard of this on the news, the TV, radio. I listened to all the alt media stations everywhere. And so 5 years ago, when I first got my first radio show, I says, I got to do a show about this. The only person I could find who even knew a little bit about it was Robert Morrow, the guy who wrote the book. He used to author books for Roger Stone. He's a guy from Texas. And I had him on the show. And the first thing I asked him was, because I had looked into this and I'd seen all kind of bizarre connections with Epstein and Trump. And I said, hey, well, what about Trump's connection to Epstein? But Robert Moore is a strict Republican at the time. He was a Trump supporter. He was working for Roger Stone. He wrote the book, The Clinton War on Women. And he says, no, Ed, I'm telling you, Trump likes adult, big-breasted women, just like I do. Because, Stone's kind of a character. He's out there, but he's definitely no fan of child abuse, that's for sure. And he knew a lot of details on the case. But even though still I had been so updated on the case that I did a whole hour. The first time I ever did an hour solo by myself after I had Robert Moore on as a guest, where I really outlined this whole thing. Jeffrey Epstein came from Brooklyn, from a middle-class family. He went to a public school, high school, the kind of school, I forget the name of it. It was like one of those I think it was Coney Island. Okay, so just imagine. That's the kind of school you'd see on Welcome Back, Kotter. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right? That's
like real middle class, like true right down the line.
Lower middle class,
Lower middle class.
Yeah, okay. Comes out of there. He doesn't even graduate college. Somehow he winds up teaching at a middle school, the Dalton School, which is a private school in Manhattan, where the little girls wear these little Catholic school uniforms that he's attracted to, that he's talked about being attracted to. One of his students from there, he has some kind of a friendship or a mentoring with this little girl, and whatever happened there. And her father worked for, I believe, Lehman Brothers or Goldman Sachs, one of those big companies. Somehow, Mr. Epstein wrangles his way into a partnership over there. Then he leaves there, some say amid some kind of scandal or whatever, but he leaves there and he goes on to start his own hedge fund company, and he declares, I will only have exclusive billionaire clients. The only client we know about is Leslie Wexler, who owned the most expensive piece of property in Manhattan next door to Bill Cosby. Interesting neighborhood.
Right, and Wexler was like, his background was it, what was the clothing line that made him money?
Oh, Victoria's Secrets.
Victoria's Secret, right.
The Limited.
So he was, Limited, that's right.
Right, and if you ever go into, if you don't have a tween little girl, I raised a daughter from exclusively until 18 years old, and when we would go shopping for clothes for her when she was 8, 9, 10 years old, they had a store called The Limited 2, which was targeted toward girls under 10, under 12. And very provocative clothing for little girls, and you wonder, well, why can't we buy normal clothes for little girls? Why does it have to that we have to be editing out so much clothes that I wouldn't let my daughter go near? And I'm no prude, you know me. So Leslie Wexler is his only known client, Leslie Wexler. And Leslie Wexler gave him the most expensive piece of property in Manhattan for, I believe, $1. There's some question about where whether it was sold, transferred, Wexler may still own it. Nobody knows. Okay, gotcha. So Epstein gets into some shenanigans with some guy. They call it a Ponzi scheme, whatever. This guy, what's his name here? This is all Pierce Redmond's work, the part I'm about to give you now.
Okay.
The guy's name is where is this? I just talked to. Wait a minute. It'll be over here. Let me find it here. Wait a second. Let me. But anyway, this guy down in Florida has a connection to Roger Stone, too, by the way. Oh, the guy's name is Scott Rothstein. Went to prison. He was running some kind of they call it a multi-level Ponzi scheme type of operation. But it had something to do with selling futures in lawsuit settlements, that they would get investors to run the lawsuit and then they'd get a payoff at the end, kind of a litigation financing business, you might call it.
Right.
And Roger Stone was involved in that business. Interesting. Yeah, right? Roger Stone, who also worked with that company, Nexum, also had his own little nonsense.
Well, supposedly worked with Nexium, right? I mean, that's what Nexium or the people claim that he was involved. Was there any proof that he's really with them?
No, just what I've heard. You're right. I don't have any personal proof that you corrected me.
I've heard the rumor that the reason why the Nexium people said that Roger Stone was working for them or were around them was to get them some press and hopefully get them donations to fight their legal bills, is what my understanding is. That's what I've heard.
Okay, great. But also, too, we've seen his Craigslist ad, which first he claimed was an FBI Operation Sting, where he was trying to find men to come and sleep with his wife. Which, by the way, was the same exact allegations against Paul Manafort. If you read the emails from his daughters that were hacked out of there, they're talking about the same exact stuff, man, about Paul Manafort passing his wife around to strange men.
Yeah, and they featured that aspect of Roger Stone's life in his documentary, Go Find Me, Roger Stone, I think.
Really?
The title.
I never got a chance to watch it. Yeah, Get Me, Roger Stone, it's called. I've never had a chance.
Yeah, and it ends with Roger Stone walking into Trump Tower.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. But they did address his sordid underworld. I mean, I think he recently said that he was... he's tried every sexual thing in the book. So,
well, Robert Morrow, I just interviewed him. He tells me that Stone told him that he had an affair with Ann Coulter.
That's what I heard, yeah. So.
But it's interesting, too.
I'm sure he could tell stories.
Yeah, Well, I had him on for an hour. He told me some great stories. As a matter of fact, his falling out with Stone, which he has a serious falling out with Stone right now, and his falling out with Trump is centered around the Katie Doe lawsuit.
Right, which we can get into. I mean, that's a side issue, but that Katie Doe came up during the election, and then a bunch of strange stuff happened, and it disappeared.
Oh, no, yeah, they dropped the suit a week before the election, November 1st, I think it was.
Right.
After,
I mean, there's Wayne Madsen is making some really serious allegations about Trump, too, and involving girls the same age as Epstein's coterie of girls, and Trump has been. There's pictures of Trump and Epstein together.
Oh no, absolutely. There's no doubt that there's a huge connection between Trump and Epstein. Trump was quoted by Vicky Ward in the New Yorker magazine in her piece, "The Curious Mr. Epstein," about how he said the quote is, and I made a meme about it actually. Where it says he booms into his speakerphone, "Oh, Jeff Epstein, we've been great friends for 15 years." This is paraphrased. He sure likes it. A lot of people say he loves beautiful women more than I do, and many of them on the younger side. And then he says that Jeffrey Epstein sure enjoys his social life. So he makes an allegation to it. Was well known in these circles that Epstein was chasing around young girls.
And Epstein operated in those circles, and he lived fairly close to Mar-a-Lago, is my understanding. I don't think they were more than, half a mile away, if that.
It is walking distance. I've been challenged on that, and someone actually measured it. I think it's about 3 miles. Okay, I can walk
3 miles. Okay, well,
I
was
can
wrong.
walk 3 miles. Okay,
it's fairly close.
In the desert.
But it's in a Tony upscale. He lived, for Epstein somehow made it to an upscale part of Florida, and that's where the abuses started quite a long time ago now. It's been 2018, and his agreement was 2008. So, sometime during the Bush administration is when Epstein's, abuses really started. Is that true?
Yes, and there was a lengthy investigation by the Palm Beach police where they actually had cameras set up next door. They took, they stole his trash every day because this wasn't a secret what was going on in this town. One of the women, the young girls, the children that Epstein was raping was Virginia Roberts, who was an employee. They found her at Mar-a-Lago when she was working there at 14, 15 years old, folding towels in the ladies' room. Ghislaine Maxwell was a friend of Trump and a friend of Epstein, and her role...
Really the closest friend of Epstein is my understanding.
Yeah, they had a relationship at one point, then had some kind of broken up relationship, but her father was Robert Maxwell, this notorious Mossad guy in England who was a con man and involved with the tabloids up there, notorious character who died mysteriously.
And he looted the pensions of, the Globe or one of these newspapers and stole $60 million. Yeah.
There you go.
He basically knew a lot, supposedly was a Mossad operative. My understanding, and I got to flesh this out, get more understanding, but he apparently threatened the Mossad with revealing some secrets, and then he was found on a boat, off the boat of his boat in the Mediterranean, drowned.
Exactly. And Ghislaine, the daughter, and by the way, everybody complains about the name, how I pronounce that, but the thing is, that's how it's spelled, so that's how I pronounce it for people,
It's a funny spell, Ghislane.
And you got to be careful when people know how to pronounce it, because usually those are people that are a little bit more involved than they want you to know they are. Okay, which is something I've discovered here, because you talk about the Mossad connection of Ghislaine, who was a helicopter pilot, by the way, too. Fascinating enough, okay, and her dad. But there was a book written about the Epstein case by a woman named Conchita Sarnoff. I had her on my show as well.
Yep.
She wrote a book called Traffic King. And she happened to be friends with what a marvelous coincidence. She happened to be friends with Donald Trump. She was friends with Ghislaine Maxwell, and she was friends with Jeffrey Epstein before all these allegations became public. Oh my goodness! She just happens to coincidentally run an organization to aid child trafficking victims and human trafficking and sex trafficking victims.
Yeah. Right.
And when you look up her organization, she has a Beverly Hills telephone number, but her organization's based down there in Palm Beach. She hangs out at all these places. And, when you look up, what do? Well, they throw a lot of balls. They throw a lot of these big, fancy, expensive balls to raise money. But then you don't quite see what projects they have going on. But I guess it takes a lot of balls to run an operation like that. And she chose as her publisher a Mossad agent named Victor Ostrovsky.
My God, right. And None Shall Call It Deception, or what was the name of his book?
Yeah, well, it's a book about deception.
Yeah, right. It's about his time in the Mossad. He was like a whistleblower.
Right, and using deception in your work. And all of his publishing companies have names like the cover story and the front. You know what I mean? So this woman and her balls has the opportunity to use any publisher out there. She could self-publish. She could find publishers, but she shows a Mossad agent should be her publisher, which is
the name of Ostrovsky's book is Mossad by Way of Deception, which comes from a biblical quote: "By way of deception, thou shalt make war."
And interesting enough, he actually called me up. We had the interview booked, but he called me up to make himself known to me prior to the interview.
Gotcha. Did you interviewed Ostrovsky?
Nah, he wanted to be interviewed. I don't know if he would come back now, and I don't know if I want to be on the radar of all these kind of people all the time. I think I'm already involved in way too much.
Well, that's an important component of the Epstein case.
Yes.
Here's this kind of lower middle class guy who only has one rich client, who somehow has this opulent lifestyle with no real known employment, right? He has one client. He's not out there hustling trying to get business from a bunch of other people. He just has one benefactor, which is very odd and unusual. So he has a guy worth $4.5 billion. And some of the details that came out Virginia Roberts, who you mentioned, she like got married and went to Australia. Like she got out of the country